Right? It's not just the CFO has to change, the entire team has to transform.
What skills do you prioritize when building a high-impact finance team?
Figure out how to bring the company back.
How do you see AI and automation changing the finance operations and landscape?
Tap into geographies where we get the lowest cost of funds.
Are there nuances or differences between finance leadership between various industries like say IT, manufacturing, services?
Move around, have different experiences, it will make you a better person.
Hello everyone, welcome to Future of Finance with Salil, where we explore how the finance world is changing during rapid transformation and digital disruption. I'm your host Salil, and today we have Ranjit Nair, CFO of Nous Infosystems, a finance professional with nearly 3 decades of experience across various industries. He has led M&As, IPOs, ERP rollouts, corporate structuring. I think he's the best person to talk about the future of finance. Welcome to our show, Ranjit.
Thanks, Salil. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's take a deep dive into some of your experiences. You have led IPOs and raised funds. What has been your biggest learning during that experience?
Well, IPO of a new organization is a great learning experience. But an IPO has to be a well thought out decision, right? And I would advise that every organization should be always thinking that they should have an option to go to IPO, because what will happen is that the support systems that are to be put in place will be best in class. We were a kind of organization which was growing big time, but the growth was it will have a sudden spurt of growth where technology and systems and people may not be keeping in pace with that. So we have to think what are the best people for the job, what are the best technologies to do the job, and what transformation is required to suit the demand of an IPO. So much so the decision to change the ERP, to get in team members who have experience in largest organizations. Those are decisions that had to be taken before we went into an IPO.
So you have managed multiple geographies. So what has been your approach of managing treasury or loan books across geographies?
Well, obviously the requirement of funds in each of the geographies, even in an organization, could be different, right? Mm-hmm. While one might be thinking of a strategic buyout, the others could be on working capital, and the other where there could be arbitrage also. The need of funds being diverse, and because there is regulatory requirements on the end use of those funds, right, it is important that we tap into geographies where we get the lowest cost of funds. We are able to get that funds to the place where it is really required. For example, taking a fund from a large bank in Singapore for use in India.
You have led many ERP implementations like SAP, etc. So what would be your advice to a CFO who is leading a digital transformation in his company?
There are diverse ERPs, some big, some smaller, and it's important that an organization decides what they want based on what their industry and their go-to-market demands. Let's say a smallish organization might want to look at a smaller ERP, even though it may not give all the functionalities as a bigger ERP does, but it will suit their requirements. And of course, when we talked about SAP, it was in a largest organization with almost 32 plus subsidiaries. So it was easy to roll it out to each of these entities. So that situation demanded probably a larger ERP. But I've had situations where a smaller entity, maybe a subsidiary of this large entity, we went with a smaller ERP thinking that that's the best thing for that entity. Right. And obviously then the questions arise, how do you consolidate if you are on diverse ERPs and all. There are good amount of consolidation tools that will help you do the job.
You have been responsible for legal, tax, compliance across various countries. How do you ensure alignment and agility while managing this?
So I guess the complexities of compliance changes with geography, right? But there are a few set of compliance standards and procedures which is baseline across all geographies, right? So tax has to be paid at a certain time and all that computations. Timings might change, where all we have to file might change, but the baseline is always set. Right. So it's important that these baselines are captured into some kind of a compliance tool. Right? So we have a baseline and then we optimize it or customize it would be the right word to geographies. So let's say taxes, GST, VAT, right? VAT might be similar to for Canada and UK, so, and to Germany. So those, if you have that set timelines, and you put it into a place where you can capture it along with timelines, requirements, safeguards, and then affix responsibilities to it, it's actually 90% of your job. Right. Then the remaining 10% is to realign, because compliance is to change. And how quick your tool can adapt to that is something that also needs to be taken care of. And it's advisable to have a local consultant in every geography that you're operating in, because you wouldn't know whether things have changed in US unless you're regularly keeping track of it.
So Ranjit, this is a question we ask all our guests. You have worked in multiple industries across 3 decades. In your opinion, how has the role of CFO changed or transformed?
Actually, my first experience was being an investment banker, right, for a couple of years. Then went to core accounting, and then moved on to different things. So the thought process that the finance is traditionally a bookkeeper and is expected to report numbers at the end of the month, that is kind of changing, because the demands of the CEO has also increased in a way, right? CEO is no longer a person that has to look at it from a 60,000 feet. So he expects the team also to be helping him in that decision making. So we moved on from being a bookkeeper to more of a strategic planner, right? Thinking about what next. How do you want to grow our organizations? Those are things that we regularly get pulled into, and rightfully so. The other is technology, right? Gone are the days where we were looking at very old systems for accounting, and now you put some data in, it will throw out intelligent data, which need not be analyzed. So in a way, the finance role has moved on to look at data and make it information. How meaningfully that can contribute to the organization's growth is also very much expected from a finance team. Then risk and compliance, right? The regulations are changing left, right and center. You have to keep track. Then now we have had evolving responsibilities. Look at it earlier, M&A used to be a separate department by itself. Correct. That has changed because they feel that the person who understands business, how it synergizes to a new acquisition, right? Finance with its on command of data and information is able to drive that part. Okay. Then obviously we are expected to keep teams that keep pace with the growth, right? It's not just the CFO has to change, the entire team has to transform.
You have worked in various industries. So in your opinion, are there nuances or differences between finance leadership between various industries, like say IT, manufacturing, services, etc.?
One, I thank circumstances that helped me work in different organizations. Life would have been very boring if I had been working in one organization throughout, as in one kind of organization throughout, right? Finance role, we have all understood that it has evolved. Correct. Right? And that evolution, whether it be in an IT organization or a manufacturing organization or any other setup, has to happen. So the core of finance might not change across finance, but how that has to evolve towards the different elements of the sector, that has changed. So let's say in manufacturing, the raw material is very different from the raw material of IT company, right? So understanding that is something that a finance member has to adapt to. Saying that, oh, I've worked only in IT, let's stick to that, is not the right way to do it. Move around, have different experiences, it will make you a better person.
So how do you partner with business to drive growth and profitability?
I think a major part of my experiences was in a business finance role. I believe as a business finance person to have your skin in the game. Once they feel that you are a part of their progress, they will treat you differently. They will have you come into each of your meetings. So the best part would be in such a scenario, establish clear dashboards. Each industry is different, let's say, and each business will have its own complexities. Understand what are those complexities, understand how you can assess and how it can be measured for growth or for other levers.
Based on your experience, what role does finance play in decisions like pricing, entering new markets, services, etc.?
Knowing the entire business and knowing what are the key achievements, priorities of the business, it's easy for finance to understand pricing, right? What is the price that province both on the revenue side or the cost side to achieve a certain margin. So they play a very critical role. It's important that we give businesses clear benchmarks and also delegate responsibilities to say that there are these different pricing profitability levels. When you enter into a new geography, you are entering into a new complexity. The complexity in terms of regulatory, complexity in terms of labor, right? And all these finally impact the numbers. And therefore, typically what I've seen is that when you get into a new geography, the finance person is asked to assess the P&L in line with, along with the business leader and come up with a plan and come up with what are the different points at which there's a break even to a profit, right? And then asked to measure against it.
Can you give us an example of an instance where finance directly led a turnaround or a growth strategy?
We had few circumstances, very distinct circumstances where we have been impacted pretty much severely with the changing geopolitics or let's say a virus. There has been contracts that gets lost because our customers don't know where they are headed, and the companies, of course, where I was, we were impacted too, and we had to figure out what to do next. And then there came times when we had daily calls to figure out, hey, now we are headed here. What do we do next? That moment for almost 6 or 7 months to figure out how to bring the company back into this was entirely led by finance. So any turnaround, it is critical that you have a finance person who kind of tries to drive it. Right? Obviously, there are CEOs and other persons in the organization, and they also will do their thing. But the involvement of finance also becomes very critical.
How do you see embedded systems and decentralized models impacting traditional finance?
I think the change is bound to happen. Right? We had a traditional outlook of information being in a particular place, and then that information used to get distributed to different places. But smart teams operate on a very different model. They say that smart information is at the center, and the ones that are really not so critical or not so strategic will lie at the business level. So they started centralizing even the FP&A function. So almost 67% of the FP&A is now sitting in the center. And this helps them to optimize on the kind of reporting that is required by businesses. And obviously you don't have to then spend as much on human capital too. Obviously when you talk about other things for fintech and all, let's say blockchain, right? It has transformed the way bookkeeping happens, making it more secure, and that also works on a very different model, right? So so these disruptions have helped finally in optimizing the way we used to record, transact and report information.
As a people leader, what skills do you prioritize when building a high-impact finance team?
As I said, the finance team and the approach has to evolve, right? And one of the foremost thing that you should be looking at is a person who's ready for change. Because change is anyway going to be a part of his current responsibility and throughout his future, right? So he should be a person who's ready to evolve. He should be a person who's ready to embrace new technologies. The other important thing which sometimes we as professionals kind of need to be thinking about is a V before an I. Usually we have seen that if there is an I in that particular team, then they tend to drag things to a different direction, right? The other thing is perspiration. I think there's a saying that things are about 99% perspiration, 1% luck. So people should be ready to work hard. The other is ambition. I like an ambitious guy. An ambitious guy who wants to be successful, and he will do whatever it takes to get himself to be successful, and that will lead to an improvement of the overall team itself.
How do you see AI and automation changing the finance operations and landscape?
AI has been the new buzzword these days, and we can see it kind of implemented in the most ERPs that we operate in. When if you do a common search, there's some AI that is giving you information. So I think the most important thing that AI has brought into the thing is about automation and creating efficiencies, right? Automated roles, which usually had a human capital, need not have a human capital because it's a streamlined function, right? And when it's a streamlined function where AI or a machine is kind of doing that algorithm and completing that particular thing, it brings in efficiencies, right? Similarly, risk assessment in each of the geographies, it's a standard stuff. It doesn't change, and it requires someone who can, do a repetitive task at more efficient levels. Then things about reporting. Again, I earlier also talked about the kind of changes that we're having in data being converted into information, and now information getting converted into insights for strategic decisions, right? So you might not in future require somebody to even give that information. It will be handed over a platter saying that this is what it is, this is what I analyze as what you should be doing next to arrive at this end goal. That's something that I'm sure AI will chip in. So risk management is another stuff that we talked about.
So do you think it will lead to reduction in workforce?
See, we thought that the advent of computers will lead to reduction in workforce. It really didn't, right? It brought in new opportunities. And I'm sure, when AI grows, human knowledge will also grow to a pace where it will be what next. But with each leap in technology, the requirement of human capital is going to become more. And I don't see a reduction. I see that human requirements will be reshaped from its current requirement to a different set of requirement.
Ranjit, you spoke about the benefits and advantages of AI and automation. But what would be the challenges and risks associated with digitization?
I think with the evolution of technology, I don't think we have put sufficient guardrails around it, right? And because those guardrails are not there, human beings are now forced to put those manual guardrails. Let's say, for example, a certain information came in. AI might interpret in a manner in which it has been programmed to interpret, right? And it might be very different from what you require it to interpret, right? Because every organization could be different. So AI might think of it as a level playing ground for all industries, but that interpretation to your organization is something that we need to be careful about. If you leave it to AI doing the particular activity and it finally ends up being something that is erroneously done, the implications are far higher. We need to be careful while we implement this technology that for that particular industry, sufficient guardrails are prepared.
What about data security and cyber attacks?
If you look at data security and cyber, there is a fairly robust program that has been built into most systems, right? Let's say Microsoft has its own, so they try to have an overall guardrail around it. Therefore, it might safeguard you against external threats, but when it comes to internal the information going out, it cannot protect you. So you still have a problem that while most of the cyber tools safeguard you from external, it may not safeguard in you what you have planned into your AI, right? So those guardrails also needs to be in place.
Before we wind up the show, let me ask you one final question. The theme of this podcast is Future of Finance. So in your opinion, what are the changes that you anticipate in finance over the next 5 years?
One, I talked about a digital disconnect, right? That finance team members have to evolve also, right? Tech savviness needs to be picked up, right? So that's something that quick training and stuff like is required so that this digital disconnect is reduced. Now, we talked about AI, right? And that AI, how it is transforming the business, the role of a finance might change. Because data is now becoming a central versus a decentralized stuff, right? And therefore, it is bound to change. Shared services is going to evolve and might lead to a lot of RPA also, automation also. I'm sure the traditional way the finance has been educated will also have to have a fundamental change, right? Which has to be more technology driven also. Now, coming to the other big emerging stuff, like ERPs has also evolved as of now,
Yes.
where the AI and also already embedded into this ERP.
Cloud,
So
cloud.
everything has been cloud technology, right? So people have stopped investing in hardware completely. Even largest organizations who think data is important have found out the benefits of moving to cloud and a SaaS-based solution and things like that, and integrating reference systems. So you will see less and less fixed expenditure, right, and more towards a SaaS-based culture where those SaaS-based organizations are quickly able to change their models for their clients. So there's a lot of changes going on, and I'm sure as a finance team member, we will do what is required to keep pace with this changes.
Yeah, exciting times ahead. Thank you, Ranjit, for coming on our show. It was great to have you. Your experience in M&A, IPO, ERP implementations have been truly inspiring. We look forward to having you more on our show.
Likewise, Sai, and it has been a pleasure to be here. So
Thank you.